Well, BJ, I'm so excited to have you on, man. When I was looking through your stuff and what you're doing, I'm like, dude, I got to talk to this guy just personally. The stuff that you're doing with fatherlessness and how fatherhood wounds deeply impact us as men today. I'm like, even if we never hit record, I would want to pick your brain and for just my own soul healing. But tell us, man, who you are, what you're up to these days, the work you're doing.
Sure. So my name is BJ Communicates, also known as Dr. Brad Johnson. I am a IO psychology professional, which means that I use psychological principles in the workplace
Hmm.
to solve workplace problems. So I always tell people in the other side of me, the corporate side of me, I help managers deal with difficult employees, and I help employees deal with difficult managers.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I do that. And then in addition to that, I'm a writer. So I write urban fiction. And the intention of that is to tell fictional stories of people from across the nation in an uplifting and inspiring way for us to deal with the issues of our past so that we can become all that we're supposed to be. Because I am a firm believer that if we do not deal with it, what we don't deal with continues to show up in our life until we get the lesson to deal with it in the most productive and healthy way. I am a father. I have a 10-year-old son, and I have another son that is in heaven that passed away
Mm,
years ago. I am a husband. This year will be 15 years with me and my
mm.
wife. And I'm also, I don't talk about it a lot in the writing space, but I am also a senior pastor. My wife and I planted a church here in Richmond, Virginia over 11 years ago, doing urban ministry among people that are often overlooked and unchurched. So
Wow.
I have a full deck.
Yeah, man. They're like each of those kind of categories that you used in your introduction. I feel like I want to tackle each of those. I feel like the audio cut out just for a second when you said about the son that you lost. How
Mhm.
long ago was that?
So that would be he would be 11. He would be
Wow,
11. Yeah. Yeah.
man. Um, can you share a little bit about that and
Absolutely.
that journey? I mean, just I can't imagine the pain.
Sure. So for my wife and I, so we went through some things when we decided to start a family. We got married and spent the first couple of years, just enjoying one another, getting to know what it means to be married. And then we decided to have children. And so when we did that, we got pregnant the first time in I want to say 2013.
Mm,
And we went to the first appointment and found out there was no heartbeat.
mm,
And so, my wife had to go through a procedure for that. And then we got pregnant the very next year. We didn't waste any time. We got pregnant the next year and we were having a boy. And so we got to a little bit over 5 months. And so one day I came home from work and coincidentally, I was in the car talking to God, thanking him for my wife, thanking him for my son that we're about to have and all of that. And I walk into my house and my wife is screaming.
mm.
And so I drop everything in my hands. I run upstairs to discover that my wife has delivered our son in the bathroom
Oh
and he is
no.
alive.
Oh
And
my gosh.
pick him up for him to take his last breath in my arms and die. And so um, we had to go through a funeral, which me and my wife eulogized our own son. We had to bury him in our family
Mm,
cemetery. And we still had to believe God because and that was probably a year's journey of just walking with God and not, doing everything not to lose our marriage by being open with one another. We came up with a thing what's on your heart, what's on your mind. And so no matter what it was, we were open and honest with one another. Many nights crying, many nights
mm.
just praying for one another in the bed. And just giving God our hearts. That was the biggest thing that, one of the scriptures that I leaned on was that Jesus heals the brokenhearted. And so every day I would get up and say, Lord, my heart is broken into 1,000 pieces. And
Mm.
I need to heal me. Here's my heart. I'm telling you that I am broken beyond measure. And so we walked through that season and God brought us even closer together. And after that, a year later, um, the Lord blessed us with our son that we have that is now 10 years old. And so I always tell that because it is a part of our story that I don't just say my son that is living is my son. I have one in heaven and I will have
Wow.
one. They both are my boys. So
Jeez, dude, that just rips my heart out, man. I'm really, really sorry. That's a traumatic experience. I mean,
for sure. But I've been able to heal by talking about it. And coincidentally, one of my best friends who came and sat with me when our son died, the very next year, he went through the exact same thing with his
oh my
daughter, where
gosh.
their daughter was born early at home and passed away. And so the Bible says, with the same comfort that God comforts us, we are then able to comfort others. And so I knew exactly how to pray. I knew exactly
Mm.
what to say and what not to say, and to walk with Him through that. And so it's become, though I don't believe God caused it, He has used it for His glory. And I've been able to walk with other people and to let people know that there is healing on the other side, not just that I survived it or we survived it, but the fact that God will heal you. It took about a year. I'm not going to even lie. It took about a year. And coincidentally, I had a dream almost a year to the day right before my son Brandon was born, where I the Lord took me. I've never been there in my life, but I saw myself in Arlington Cemetery,
Mm.
and I was putting my baby that had died at home in the grave, Nehemiah. I was putting him in a grave, and I didn't understand why. And in the dream, someone said to me, "This is where you bury soldiers, casualties of war."
Mm.
And now it's time for him to rest. And that was the whole dream.
Wow.
And that ended my grieving season. Like, it ended it in a way where I felt like the healing of the Lord came into me. And because for a year, it took me a year just to get my wife's screams out of, because when I walked in the house, she just was screaming. And it took me a year to get her screams out of my head. Right.
Yeah.
But that moment with God giving me that dream, it brought a healing to me to understand that this was not the will of the Lord. This was a casualty of the spiritual warfare that we are in.
Mm.
And so, though it was tragic, it was traumatic, I never lost my faith in God, because if um, my revelation in that was, if I blame God for this, then I have no other help. How can I ever come out of this? If I look at how can He heal me if I think it's His fault?
Mm.
And so, I dug in the scriptures. I had a lot of wise counselors, and I just allowed myself to walk through the trauma and the pain, and allow God to heal me and to make it all right. And I still miss my son to this day. My first book was dedicated to him, both of my sons. But at the same time, I am at peace with the fact of where he is, and that when the Lord Jesus comes again, I'll never have to say goodbye ever again. So.
Yeah. Praise God. Thank you for sharing that vulnerably. I know that it's tough stuff to think about. Thank you for sharing that. I've never, we've been fortunate to never experience the loss of a child in miscarriage or in that way, but I know it's actually really common, and it happens to very many families.
Mhm.
And I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, because this is just kind of an outsider's perspective, but it almost seems like women often have a lot of support, as they should. This is such a traumatic thing for a woman to go through, but it seems almost a little more quiet on the father's side.
For sure.
When there's a loss, especially when we're talking about like early birth like that,
Mhm.
or miscarriage. It seems like this isn't a conversation that a lot of men have, or fathers, in the way that it impacts a man
For
when he loses
sure.
a baby. What,
For
what, what would
sure.
you say to that?
I think that, for one thing, men are taught that, sometimes it's a unspoken stigma that it's a woman's thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that sometimes men, because we are not often as vocal as women, we just kind of suck it up and say, "I'm here to support her." But if we don't deal with the trauma, it comes out in unhealthy ways. And even recently, probably about 2 years ago, one of my fraternity brothers, who I remember, he was in the fraternity before me, and though I'm a little bit older than him, I shared that in my interview for the fraternity, and he said, "Then I was like, oh, okay." And then literally the exact same thing happened to him 2 years ago, and he came to me and said, "I apologize that I wasn't as sensitive to you." And I said, "I didn't take it that way." He said, "But no, I should have dialed in, because now I'm walking through it, and I thank you for being there for me." And then through him, I found that there are support groups for men. Like, there's a support group called Sad Dad,
Mm.
where it's all for men who have gone through the premature birth or death of a child. And
Mm.
it's a support group just for Christian men. And I was just amazed, because, when it happened to me, I had no idea that anything like that existed. And so I was happy to hear that he was able to find support in that, and that more men are talking about that now more than ever.
Yeah, I think that that's needed, man. I like the way that you said something there. You said men are not as vocal, and I like the way you phrased that. Instead of saying men are not as emotional,
Mhm.
I don't know if that was intentional, but men,
Yes,
because because men are emotional, and I think that's a as you know, and I'd love to pick your brain on this, but there is kind of this misconception that men aren't as emotional. A lot of wives might say that about their husbands. A lot of men might even say that about themselves. Well, my wife's just more emotional than me. And I've really come to understand in the last year that's like, dude, we're all experiencing emotions. And you also said in your last answer there that it just bleeds out somewhere else.
correct. And I think that we're emotional because whether you're a man or a woman, we're made in the image of God, and God
Right.
has emotions. And so
Right.
therefore we have emotions, right? And so I think that for men, often it comes out different and a different emotion. So men lean more to aggression and anger more than crying and weeping over it. And so sometimes it's not that we're not emotional, we just express a different emotion. It comes out in rage. It comes out in road rage. It comes out in being angry at work or having outbursts of anger with our family and friends, the people that really love us. Sometimes it comes out in a form of depression that we show. And so it does demonstrate. It demonstrates for every single one of us. It just may look different for a man than it does for a woman.
Yeah, and that it will bleed out somewhere, like you said, the road rage. Like all of a sudden, you're screaming at the guy in the truck next to you or whatever. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
where did that come from? Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's because you had an emotion that you didn't really sit with
Mm-hmm.
properly a week ago, or
Right.
3 days ago. Something else was something in your marriage was stressing you out or at work. And you, instead of sitting there and learning the tools to process that in a healthy way, now you're flipping off the dude who just cut you off and you want to
Right.
kill him. You know what I mean? Dude,
Right.
I read a, I was actually writing a book and talking about specifically how men, struggle with anger, and this is one of the ways that we kind of express our emotions, as you were just saying. And I was trying to find a story of there was a dad who ended up shooting another dad while their families were in the car because
Mm.
of road rage. And when
Wow.
I was trying to Google that, there were multiple stories. It wasn't like Google gave me many stories of this happening. I'm just like, dude, this is insane. The
Yeah.
fact that we have, and that just again is kind of testament to the point that we're trying to make is there's a lot bottled up in us. It is not
Yes.
that you are not emotional. It is that you are not as vocal. You haven't learned the tools. And I say you, but dude, I've struggled with this my whole life. I'm still trying to learn like what am I actually feeling right now in the
Mm-hmm.
moment so that I don't scream at my kids over them spilling milk or whatever it is,
Yes. Yes. And sometimes it's because also we don't create, a lot of men don't have friends. And what I mean by friends is real friends. Like we have people that we may go to church with, we may work with, and we talk about superficial things. But oftentimes we don't have friends where I can give you my heart and I can cry in front of you and you don't look at me any different. It doesn't
Mhm.
less of a man because I do it. And so therefore we bottle it up because sometimes we just feel like we don't want to talk to our wife about it because some things she's not a man and she may not get understand because she's never had to experience in the way that we experience it. But we don't have a lot of the friends. We can watch sports with people, people that are unsaved. We can go to the strip club with them. We can do all
Mhm.
these things that are ungodly. But when it comes to what I'm dealing with life, I found in my own personal life that a lot of men don't know what to say because if they're not in touch with their own emotions, how can you help me navigate mine?
Dang, man. That's a really, I wanted to just sit in that for a second because that's really great. Like, how can I even be a good friend if I'm not practicing my own emotions and dealing with my own
Hmm.
emotions? Then I'm not giving you the freedom to express yours and learn how to, like you were saying, sit with you in pain, like
Hmm.
your friend did for you, and then you were able to do for him. How can I do that unless I'm trying to figure out what I'm feeling on my own, and maybe why my mind is just racing with so many thoughts there, but maybe why we don't have good friendships is because so many men are not taking the time to really deal with what's going on inside. They're bottling it up and we just all stay at the surface level.
Yep.
That's really profound, man. You said you and your wife were doing these check-ins. What did you say they were called? How did you phrase
So
it?
we would always ask each other, what's on your heart, what's on your mind. So
On your heart,
anytime
what's on
that
your
I
mind?
would anytime that we would kind of be silent, because oftentimes when you go through trauma that both of you experience, you can kind of walk around the house in a daze. And
Hmm.
so just to make sure that we didn't give the enemy any place have our own private thoughts where he was kind of leading us away from the marriage and leading us away from God. Whenever I saw her kind of staring off, or she saw me kind of retreating, she would ask, "What's on your heart? What's on your mind?" And we had promised one another that we will be completely honest. This is what I'm thinking in this moment, good or bad, right
Mm,
or wrong. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. And this allowed us to process it together. It allowed us to know what to pray for one another. And it allowed us to get it out. Because it comes out in unhealthy ways when we, as we're talking about, when it is bottled up. And so we would just say it. It's just you and I say it, and we would talk about it. We would process through it, and we had divine encounters with God in
mm,
the midst of those moments, because we would always say, God, we invite you into it. This is where I am right now, because Scripture says, "Cast your cares upon Him, for He careth for you." And so we would just say, this is where we are right now. God, help us in this moment. And every time, I mean, I can't say anything but the truth. Every time he would step in and give one little piece that would help us be put back together again.
mm. I love that, man. We've been doing a lot of check-ins. Layla and I, my wife and I, have been doing a lot of check-ins with each other lately. And you'll get this as a writer, that when you don't check in, it's crazy how quickly your brain can start to write a story.
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, dude, we are really good. I think everybody is really good story writers in your head. And when
Hmm.
you're not communicating with your spouse, you just start to write all kinds of weird stories,
For
man. And your
sure.
brain goes to weird spaces. And what's crazy is when you get it out, when you actually talk about it, the story is just 100 times less dramatic than you've made it
Uh-huh.
in your head,
Hmm.
almost
Yeah.
inevitably.
Yeah.
We would what we've been doing, and a lot of guys, I've been meeting with guys locally here and stuff, and they push back on this. But what we do is when we do our check-ins, I print it out. If you just Google feelings wheel,
Okay.
you can see a wheel that will show like 100 or more different emotions. Because a lot
Hmm.
of times when you ask a guy, like even a wife saying to her husband, "How are you doing? What's on your heart? What's on your mind?" He'd be like, "I'm fine. I'm good.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm good."
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's like, well, good's not an emotion. That
Right.
fine is not an emotion. And so sometimes just having a list of emotions in front of you is helpful. It's just like, okay, I am actually feeling this. One time, dude, I was meeting with we do a thing called garage group. A bunch of my friends will meet in our garage and just try to process stuff. These
Hmm.
are like strong military guys. They hate when I do this kind of stuff with them, these emotion check-ins. But one of them, I was asking, I was like, dude, how you doing? And he's like, I'm good. No, I'm fine. Like, great week, whatever. He just gave me all these shallow answers. Then I
Hmm.
handed him this feelings wheel. And I'm like, all right, just pick three of these. And dude, bro, the three feelings that he picked were like the most depressing,
Wow.
saddest thing. I'm like, dude, you just said you were fine. And then I give you some words, and the three things you pick up are like this. And that led us to a much deeper conversation as to why he was
Hmm.
internally feeling those things. And so it might be helpful for a guy or, anyone
For
who's
sure.
married, just like print out, literally just Google feelings wheel. I printed it out, laminated it, and now we use it when we do those check-ins. What's on your heart? What's on your mind? I love that. It's super simple. You can actually reference some emotions, and I promise you it'll
I
help you
love
go
that.
deeper in
Yeah.
what you're feeling. Bro, what made you want to go into the fatherlessness space and how that's affecting men today? Is there a personal story behind that?
Yes. So in my books, I talk. They're fictional stories, but some of it deals with fatherlessness and the father wound and some of the characters. And the reason is, I wouldn't say I experienced fatherlessness, but what I've experienced in my life is, so my father has always been in my life. But my father, I didn't know it as a child, but now looking back, I realized that my father dealt with substance abuse my whole life.
Mm,
And so him choosing to deal with substance abuse caused him to not show up in the way that my brother and I needed him to. So my parents divorced when I was 5. My father always worked. He retired, working for the government. He always had a job, but he had issues. And so I always say that the thing that my dad showed me out of everything he could have was how to have a good time. That was the main thing.
mm,
Two things. I would say he told me how to have a good time and never let life get you down. One of them was bad, one of them was good, because I have carried not letting whatever happens in life crush you. That I got that from him for sure.
mm,
But it caused him to not be there for me. And one thing about men, and I always say this from a biblical lens, that mothers teach us how to exist in relationship. Fathers give us identity. And any boy who does not have a father, or even if the father is in the house but not dialed in, he will struggle with who he is. And that can come out in a myriad of ways. And so I struggle with identity. I struggle with loving myself. I struggle with knowing who I was, because I had no one to lay their hands on me and say, this is who God has called you to be. I am the first preacher. Both my wife and I are the first preachers in our whole family. So I don't come from a line of, granddaddy did it and then dad did it. And so you saw godly men that were walking in a calling in front of you. I had no reference point for any of that. I just knew that the Lord found me. Right. And
Mhm.
so I navigated through, number one, understanding what it was to be a man. Number two, trying to learn what it was to be a man of God with no reference point in front of me from my own family line.
Mm.
And so there was a lot of wounds from my dad. And then just recently, my dad died at the end of August.
Mm.
And that broke me in a way that I can't even put into words. I write about, I dedicated the new book, Heart Conversations book 2, to him. And I say in the dedication that when my dad died, I felt like everything in me hurt. My lungs hurt.
Mm.
My arms hurt. My eyes hurt. It released a pain in my body that I never experienced, because though me and my father didn't have the relationship that I desired, we had a relationship. He came to my house often. Anything that I had, I included him, but it never was the relationship that I really felt like I wanted. I could never go to my dad and say, Dad, I'm dealing with this. What is your advice?
Mm.
Right? I was the one giving advice versus being the one, that was giving advice. And so when he died, I love my dad. My dad dealt with challenges in the last couple of years of his life with his self-inflicted health, things that he had done to himself. But I was there every day. I was there. Whatever he needed me to do, I did it. But it released a pain, because I think it was a pain of losing him because I loved him. And it was also the pain of there never being a redeeming of the time, the redeeming of, it can never be. I thought we had more years, and I'm not gonna cry. I thought we had more years. I thought we had more time to fix it, and then to see um, that chapter's over. Um, it released a grief in me that I didn't even know was there. And so God has even walked with me through that. And so, yeah, and then I know that a lot of guys deal with that, where they may have and I always encourage people, have the relationship with your dad that you can, even if it's not what you want, make it something, whatever it can be. My dad, because of the type of person that he was, my son could never go anywhere with him by himself. I just
Mm.
didn't trust my dad in that way, right? Because
Mhm.
I know places that he took us. Other people, haven't had the experience where you're sitting outside of in the inner city outside of the drug man house at 2 a.m. I have, right, as a child. And so for that, my dad could never take my son, but he could always come over and see my son. I never kept my son from him. I would always take my son over to his house for cookouts and things like that. But I just had to set boundaries. And so I tell people, have the best relationship with your father that you can, even if it's not what you need. But at the same time, I know that there are a lot of guys that struggle with that, and they're angry about it. And I don't say that I was angry about it. I was just sad about it. That
Yeah.
I saw other people that had these fathers that were amazing, and they lived the life before them, that I could go to them when I wanted to buy my first house and say, "Hey, how did you do that, Dad? I need this from you." And I need it. I need Dad. Tell me how to do this. And I did. I just didn't have that. I didn't. God put other men in my life that I could go to, but it wasn't my dad. And no matter how many mentors you have, every little boy wants their dad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's never the same. I had a lot of men step up in my life and were really gracious. I think they saw that I didn't have a father around when I was young, but it's never the same. They can, no other man really feels like it could fill that wound. I won't, well, I shouldn't say that. I know there are a lot of great stepdads out there, but, it just doesn't really feel that need. When you talked about the story being over, or, that the finality of your dad's death, I could tell that that pricked a wound. What did that hit? What nerve
um,
did that hit?
because I don't think that I have articulated it in that way until this moment. Just to give you some more context. So my dad, um, at the end of his life, my dad was very depressed, just about life, right? And
Mm.
so, though we would go and spend time with him and all of that, he just was. My dad did not, in my opinion, just was over life. He didn't want to live anymore, so he would do things like not eat,
Mm.
and just he was just over. Some of his friends had died. And my dad was 67 when he died. And
Dude,
so
that's really young.
yeah, but he
Really
was
young.
just kind of over life where he didn't want to eat anymore. He didn't want to. He would do reckless things, and I my dad called myself and my brother, and said, "Hey, on Saturday, I want you to." I just seen him on Monday, mind you, but I saw him on that Thursday. He called me and said, "I want you and your brother to bring your sons over here. We're gonna have a cookout on Saturday." I said, "Well, Dad, let's go to a restaurant." "No, I want you all to come over." And I said, "Okay." And so he called me. He called my brother. Me and my brother talked after and said, "Hey, Dad wants us to come over. We're gonna come over." And he was talking to both of us, and he was sitting outside, and we said, "Dad, it's so hot outside. Why don't you just go in the house? It's hot. It's like 100 degrees outside. Go in the house." And he said, "Okay, I am. I'm just thinking about some things." And apparently my dad went to stand up and dropped dead.
Oh my gosh.
And so that I've never articulated the finality of it until me and you are talking right now. I've articulated how I felt about it, but when I think about it, that's the part that still God is healing me from. The finality of it can never be anything more than what it was, because now it's over. And that is a lot, because all of us want to fix it, and we always think that we have more time. We always think that we have more time. And so I am at peace with how I loved on my dad. I'm at peace with how I was there with my dad. But it still stings, that death robbed us of the time where we could have fixed some things and had more conversations, and the hope that my dad would have gotten it together, right? That he would have changed in other ways, and been even a better grandfather to our sons. And he was amazing. He never did anything to hurt my son or anything like that, or never said anything that was hurtful to my son. But it's just the fact of, I grew up with a grandfather that was in my life, right? Like my grandfather
Mm.
was there. I could go somewhere with my grandfather. My son doesn't have that experience.
Mm. Man, I really empathize with you. I can feel that pain. I'm getting emotional, even as you share that, because I do think I've had moments where I've thought about that. My dad's still alive, and we have a growing relationship, and certainly been lots of restoration there. But I've had that thought that, like, once that happens, when death happens, there is that finality, and that the story is written. It's been written and it's done. The book is closed on that relationship, and everything that was true about it is true, and it stays. And I guess what I would encourage any listener, like, if you have, like we were saying, we all just believe we have more time, and that's not a good way to live, man. We gotta be able to address things in our, if there's wounds that need to be addressed, if there's pain, if there's bitterness, if there's something you need to say sorry for, or even just ask. I remember I asked my dad, to his credit, I asked him, like, man, you caused a lot of pain,
Mhm.
and how could you have done that? And he apologized. And the courage that I had, whether, right or wrong or timing or whatever motivated it, like, the courage to ask him about it gave him permission to at least offer an apology. And that was really healing for me. And
Absolutely.
so, I just think that guys need to lean into that, man, because life is super, super short, and we're
Yeah.
going to be, when I went away to do some deep counseling last year, and I was with 9 other guys, and we talked a lot about trauma
Mhm.
and our childhoods. And I don't think there was a single guy in there who said that they had like an abnormal childhood. But as I heard their stories, I'm like, dude, that's not normal. Like, that's not that's not a normal. All of us, by the way, like
Mhm.
all 10 of us, all of our stories were not what we would call an ideal childhood. At some point, there were some of us who had something that was not ideal. And I think most guys listening, what we do is we kind of always default to trying to give our parents the benefit of the doubt. And I think that's even a good thing. Like, trying to honor them in their brokenness and understanding they're human, they got their own mess. But what we learned in our counseling was that most people actually don't have what they call big T traumas, these like major traumatic events. Some people do, but not everybody has those. But everyone has what's called the little T traumas,
Mhm.
these little things that over time, over and over and over, cause you to have some deep pain and deep wounds, as you were saying. Like, your dad didn't leave, but there was still pain there.
For sure.
And they actually said that the trauma, these little T traumas, most of it was what did they call it? A lack of intunement,
Mm-hmm.
meaning your parent, your caregiver, was not in tune with what you were feeling emotionally
Mm-hmm.
and able to respond to you and what
Mm-hmm.
you were feeling emotionally, which every kid needs.
Mm-hmm.
One, that's convicting for us as dads. Like, how in tune am I with
Yeah.
my children's emotion? But also, if you look at trauma, little t trauma that way, it's like, were your parents, and I'm asking this to the audience listening, like, were your parents, was your dad constantly in tune with your emotions and able to say, hey, I see that you're really sad. I see that you're really down. I see that you're really angry. What's going on there? And unpack those with you. Because if not, you probably experience some little t emotions in life. And that is most definitely affecting the way that you live in your current day.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that? I know I just kind of went on a little
Absolutely.
bit of
No,
a
no, no,
tangent
no.
there.
That is really good. It scripture says that it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. And
Mm,
so it's the same thing, the same exact concept, that it's the little things that we don't pay attention to that is really causing us not to be fruitful, right?
mm,
It's the little foxes that spoil the vine. It's the little things that our parents don't give us. I often say, in sometimes in some communities, we hear that, my parents did the best that they could, right? And it's a way of alleviating the burden of what our parents did not give us, right?
yeah.
And I don't necessarily prescribe to that. I believe that our parents did the best that they were willing to learn at that time, right?
Mm,
Because for every parent that did not give their child what they could have, should have, there was another parent who was in the very same situation that did. It's just that they were willing to learn a different way. And
mm,
oftentimes people don't change not because they have no ability to. It's that they are unwilling to learn a new way and operate a different way. And
mm,
so, though we give our parents grace because, as you said, they're having a human experience, they have missed it in some ways. Maybe they have their own trauma. Even though a part of it we can alleviate, some we have to love them enough to be honest to say some of it is your fault, right? I love you and I forgive you, of course, because as a believer, I'm called to forgive. But at the same time, I don't completely dismiss it all and said, you know what, they just did the best that they could. No, they did the best that they were willing to learn at that time, because it's not that other information was not available. It's not that they couldn't have made another choice. They chose not to either research, learn, or become something different. And so for me, I always tell the men in our church and men that I do career and communication coaching with, especially when it comes to communication with their kids, is the best thing that we can give our kids is who we become for them.
mm,
That's the greatest gift I can give to my son. Not what I can buy him, not even what I can teach him. It's who I will become for him, because children don't do what we say. They become who we are. And
yeah.
so even if they hate it, children usually become everything that their parents are. And so it's almost like, I call it a spiritual umbilical cord that connects us to our fathers. And so if we don't ever learn something different, if we don't even recognize the pattern that is passed down from fathers to sons, we will repeat it. Right.
Mm,
Even when we try to avoid it. Some people, I've talked with men who said, I hate my dad. He was never there for me. He was so terrible to me. And yet they grow up and become just like him. And sometimes it's aware and unaware. And sometimes they try to put all these things in place not to become him. And they just become him in a different way. And so we have the greatest gift that any man can give to his son is who you are willing to become for them. If you, and I said this in not too long ago to a group, that if you want your children to go to college and say, hey, I want you to be better than me, don't just say, I want you to be better than me. You go back to school, because then
mm,
you show them a path that they didn't even know was available. Most children want to see someone walk it out in front of them. And so
mm,
when you are willing to become it for them, they now have a new path that may not have been available to them before. If you don't want your children to get into addiction, alcoholism, you stop drinking, right? You set up a new pathway for them to walk down. And I think that sometimes we give our children words. I want you to be better than me. Don't do what you see me doing. Do as I say and not as I do. And yet we find time and time again that children don't do what we say, they do what we are.
mm,
If you said, don't be, I'm a womanizer, but don't be a womanizer, then guess what? The boy grows up and he
mhm,
does what he's seen his father do. And sometimes it's crazy because I say it's in a spiritual umbilical cord, because sometimes even if your your father is not in your presence, you didn't grow up with him, you still repeat it without even knowing him, which is
Yeah,
crazy to me
it
that
is
you
crazy.
can never
Yeah.
have met him, and you can repeat it unless you learn a different way, unless you break the generational curse, but you have to be able to recognize it in order to break it.
Man, everything you just said there was so profound and so much truth. I will say, just personally speaking, I've spent the last year uncovering, literally trying to flip over every stone of my life, wounds, pain, sin, repentance, all of it. And as I've done it, I can say confidently, I'm becoming more like the dad I want to be. And
Hmm.
I have not read a single parenting book in the last year. I
Hmm.
have not listened to any parenting podcast. I haven't done any like parenting expert anything. All I've done is try to me personally deal with my own wounds, my own sin, my own junk. And I am finding that I'm becoming a much better dad, a
Hmm.
dad that I'm more proud of. I have so much more work to, to do, but I'm definitely growing as a father because I'm dealing with my own. I can just say that personally, and as a husband, it's a whole nother level. Like,
Hmm.
you know, the way that I'm loving my wife as a result of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm just, I have felt what you just preached to my bones,
Hmm.
man. Where it's like I have to deal with this stuff, and this is why, again, to go kind of full circle here for the guy, it's like, I'm not an emotional guy. I'm not going to deal with my emotions. Blah blah blah. It's like, dude, the reason you have to address this stuff is because you will pass on who you are. And if you are a broken man who's bottling emotions and who's not willing to deal with the pain of your childhood and your current sins and all this stuff, you will pass that on to your
For
children.
sure.
That's just the reality. Oh man, good stuff, dude. Where can people find your books and your writing and all the stuff that you got going on?
Sure. So it's everywhere books are sold. It's BJ Communicates. I released book one, a Hard Conversations, book one, Breadcrumbs to the Past, back in 2021. And now the story of these five fictional characters continues in book two, which was released on July 1st, called Hard Conversations, book two, Breadcrumbs to the Past. I mean, excuse me, Hard Conversations, book two, over and over. That's the new one. And
Bro, you got to
so
memorize the name of your books.
yes, yes. And so this one is the continuation. The story is of five people of color who come from very different
Mm,
backgrounds, who have tried to build a successful life, successful relationships, and they keep finding that even though on the surface they have everything that's from the outside people would I think is amazing, they're not having the type of interpersonal relationship or the success that they want because of something that they have unaddressed in their past. And so now book one started it, and now book two, we're
mm,
probably in the middle of their story, and it's going to continue when I release book three, in how they go about resolving and having hard conversations with the people in their life, the people that have traumatized them, the people that they are now trying to exist in good relationship with, and how you navigate that. And it's different stories. There's stories of fatherlessness. There's stories of addiction. There's stories of molestation. There's
mm,
stories of realizing that one particular character realizes that though her father was amazing in her sight, the whole time he was living a double life and had a
mm,
whole nother family. And
mm.
so, how do you mourn the person that you thought your father was, only to discover that he's not, even though he was amazing to you, at the same time, he was living in a duality. And
Mm.
how do you begin to deal with that?
That's really intriguing, man. And it sounds like real life stuff, you know,
Yes.
like the stuff that people are actually dealing with in their day to day lives, which I love. Awesome, man. Well, we'll put links in the show notes to all that. What would be your final words for the guys who's like, man, I don't even know why I'm listening to this podcast. I don't want to deal with my wounds. Like, could you
Mhm.
just give me some parenting advice? What would you be your final words to a man listening?
The best version of you is on the other side of you dealing with your pain.
Mm,
Oftentimes, as men, we will walk around just learning to survive, but you will never become all that your children need, your father needs, your wife needs, your community needs. Without you won't even love you
yeah.
until you deal with your pain. And so it's not something that you have to do overnight. It's not something that you have to deal with all this year, but you have to start the journey with God. I don't know any other way to come out of it without him. And so I encourage you to just start dealing with it, start to dig into your emotions, because the happiest you is on the other side of dealing with your pain. The best father, the best husband, the best friend, the best son, the best grandfather is on the other side of dealing with it. And it is okay And I always say this to men that I talk to, that the Bible says that we cast our cares upon God, for He cares for us. That's important because we were meant to cast, not to carry. And if you are carrying the trauma of your past without articulating it, whether it's to a counselor, a therapist, a pastor, a friend that can handle it, then you're not doing what you were designed to do. We were designed to cast, not to carry. The Bible says, confess our faults one to another that we might be healed. And so if you want to be healed from what you're going through, if you don't want to carry the weight and the rocks in your heart that oftentimes we carry as men just trying to make it from day to day, you have to begin to articulate your experience, what you went through, to someone that you can trust. And you have to begin to allow God to dig in it. And I always say this, and this will be my last statement: whatever the Lord reveals, He's willing to heal if you're willing to deal.
Mm.
Whatever God is bringing up in you right now, and sometimes He brings it up through our experience, where something hits you between the eyes that you weren't expecting, and it causes feelings to arise. Sometimes that is God's way of revealing that this is in you. And He's always willing to heal us if we're willing to deal with it, but He can't heal what we're not willing to deal with.
Truly, I can't say anything to add any more emphasis to what you just said so beautifully. Thank you, man, for
Thank you for
your
having me.
time. Thank you for wisdom. Thank you for your vulnerability, for sharing some of your story with us. This really was super encouraging. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.